What up? This is Tragedy. So today's video is just gonna cover a wide range of subjects that I've talked about. So I had a bunch of extra videos in my folder. 2-minute videos, 3-minute videos, 5-minute videos, just a few videos that I haven't posted yet. Not on my YouTube channel anyway. And so I got all these videos and just put them together into one video. So today's video is almost an hour long, so you don't have to watch the whole thing right now if you don't have time. But save it to your watch later list and make sure you come back and watch it. You'll learn a lot of knowledge. So you could kind of look at this almost like a question and answer. So check this video out, learn some knowledge. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment if you like the video. I appreciate your support. So what's a mestizo? I get that question a lot. The word mestizo came from a Spanish word, mixture. They labeled mestizos those who were Spanish blood mixed with the indigenous blood of wherever they were at in the Americas. So of course this was the Caribbean, what is now Mexico, South America, and the southwest of America from New Mexico to California. So they had a casta system, the way that they ranked people. It's like a pyramid. The top of the casta system were the peninsulares, the people who were Spaniards born in Spain. They were the most noble. They were the ones who could be viceroys and stuff like that. And then under that, you had the creoles. The creoles were the Spaniards who were born in New Spain, but they had mom and dad that were both pure blood Spanish. So they were pure blood Spaniards born in New Spain. They ranked under. And then the third one was mestizos. And then under that, you had the Native Americans. And then under that, the African slaves. So mestizos is literally right in the middle. So you had the slaves, the natives, the mestizos, the creoles, and the peninsulares. The peninsulares could be viceroys, stuff like that. The creoles could be governors and mayors, stuff like that. But the mestizos could really be nothing but just, I guess, kind of like peasants, you could say. Same thing as the Native Americans and the African American slaves. Anyway, that's what a mestizo is, and that's also what the casta system was, in case you were wondering. Thank you for watching. This is Tragedy. I hope you learned something new. I'm out. So today I'm going to tell you guys about the Bloody Conquest of 1692. So this happened in Santa Fe, New Mexico. In 1680, there was the Pueblo revolt. They pushed all the Spaniards out. 12 years later, in 1692, Don Diego De Vargas reconquered New Mexico for the Spanish crown, and they call that the Bloodless Conquest of 1692. They try to say that it was a peaceful reconquest, that Don Diego de Vargas just moseyed into Santa Fe, put his flag down, the natives bowed, pledged their allegiance to the King of Spain and the Catholic God, and that was it. Let me tell you how it really happened. So in 1692, when Don Diego de Vargas gets to Santa Fe, there's a wall that surrounds the city. So Don Diego has to go to the door and knock. Now, he's just with a little regiment of soldiers, I don't know how many exactly, but he bangs on the door and he tries to tell them that he's a Christian, that he's a Catholic, that he's a Spaniard. While the Pueblos at the time were beefing with the Apaches. So they had beef with the Apaches, so they didn't trust the Spaniards. They thought they were Apaches dressed in Spanish armor trying to trick them to get into their Pueblo and sack it. Now their beef with the Apaches is probably the reason why they had a wall, unless the Spaniards built a wall before, I'm not sure. But there was a wall around Santa Fe. Don Diego de Vargas had to knock. He had to prove he was a Spaniard by singing some novela in Spanish, and then they believed him and let him into the town. While the reason the Pueblo natives let him into the town so quick is because they were beefing with the Apaches. The Spaniards had horses, arquebuses, which were like the first guns before muskets, cannons. They had armor, they had all kinds of stuff that the Pueblo people could use against their war with the Apaches. So they sat down with Don Diego de Vargas and they made an agreement that they were gonna let the Spanish presence stay in Santa Fe. But there was a misunderstanding there. See, the Pueblo people thought that Don Diego de Vargas meant the Spanish presence would be kept in New Mexico. You know, there'd be a few soldiers in Santa Fe to help guard the north. And that was it. So that's why it was called the Peaceful Reconquest, because no blood was shed when he got to Santa Fe because of that. Now, this was in September. So around fall, the end of the year of 1692. So Don Diego de Vargas gets on his horse and rides all the way down the Camino Real, the Royal Road, back to Mexico. He lets them know what happened. And then he also gets a bunch of families that were being collected by a friar at the time. A friar was already getting together husbands and wives and families. See, when they were colonizing a place, they would send a lot of people to actually colonize it, and they liked families. They liked They liked people who were married couples, husbands and wives. That way they could have children, they could produce, they could make a colony. So Don Diego De Vargas gets back to Mexico, and then he comes back up the Royal Road. By the time he gets back, it's winter. You know, it takes a few months to go down, get the families, come back up. So it says in winter, 1693, so my guess would be January, February. So around that time, he gets back. That's why they say 1693. It's not like it was a whole year later. It was a couple months later. It's because he reconquered Santa Fe at the end of 1692 in September. That's why we celebrate fiestas in September. So anyway, he gets back in the winter with all kinds of more soldiers and a grip of colonists and all kinds of shit. And the natives were like, wait, hold up. This is what we thought. They thought that they were just going to have a Spanish presence in New Mexico, and that was it. They didn't know that Don Diego de Vargas was going to bring all these families and they were going to settle. So that's where a disagreement happened. The natives didn't want to open the door for Don Diego de Vargas, and so it turned into a siege. He put the city under siege. He cut off their water, just like they cut off their water. And it was a siege. I don't know how much days it lasted or how long, but Don Diego de Vargas finally made it into the city and slaughtered a grip of people. So when you go downtown to Santa Fe and you walk in the plaza, you're walking over that battleground where a grip of people got slaughtered. Then after he took control, all the chiefs, 70 of them, he took them to the plaza and he executed them. And that's the story of the Bloody Conquest of 1693. It wasn't as peaceful as the history teachers tell you it was in school. That was in 1692 when he first came. But in 1693, a couple months later, there was a great slaughter, as well as some other stuff that happened after that. There was even another little Pueblo revolt in 1696, but we'll talk about that another time. Anyway, I hope you learned something new. Thank you for watching. This is Tragedy. I'm out. Did you know that the wild horses, also known as Mustangs, that run throughout the southwest of America are a result of the 1680 Pueblo revolt? So when the Spanish were settling in what is now New Mexico, but what was then New Spain or Mexico, they had horses, cows, pigs, sheep. Then when the natives came during the Pueblo revolt of 1680 and attacked all those villages, slaughtered all the people, a lot of the horses and cows and a lot of their livestock was let loose. While the horses who were let loose ran wild, became the Mustangs. Native Americans in the Great Plains used to chase them so they could catch them and ride them. Comanches became good at that. Apaches became good at that. But these wild horses came from the Spaniards, and they were a result of the 1680 Pueblo revolt, as well as the Texas Longhorn. So the Texas Longhorn is a big-ass bull with big-ass horns. Look it up if you don't know what it is. Those are also a result of the 1680 Pueblo revolt. They came from Spain. The whole idea of cowboying came from Spain, vaqueros. So in the Iberian Peninsula, Spain and Portugal, there used to be a country named Andalusia. Well, it used to be called Vandalusia because the Germanic tribe, the Vandals, had control of it. So it was called Vandalusia. And it still has the name today, but without the V, it's Andalusia. While those are where the horses came from, they used to cowboy. Those were the first cowboys in southern Spain. So when the Spaniards came to the Caribbean island, they brought cowboying with them. When they went to Mexico, they brought cowboying with them. When they came up to New Mexico, they brought cowboying with them. See, the whole idea of cowboying, you know, boots, chaps, wearing a cowboy hat, all came from Spain. Just another fun fact. This is Tragedy. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something new. I'm out. So this one says, my father is from Mexico and I was born in the US. I'm Chicano. New Mexicans are not Chicanos because they have Mexican roots from decades ago. Alright, so I made a video about this a while back, how technically first generation Chicanos would be born in Mexico. The ones who are born in America, like you, whose mom and dad were born in Mexico or whatever, are Chicano. And then their kids could be second generation, their kids third generation, and it gets watered down over time. So I know what you're saying. Now you're trying to say New Mexicans ain't Chicanos because they have Mexican roots from decades ago. While the word Chicano came from the word Mexicano, the Mexica, the Aztec. So how could New Mexicans not be Chicano if they came from the Mexica people? A lot of them did. No matter how long ago it was, they have that blood in their blood, right? So you're Rasa, right? So what makes you Rasa? So I was watching a video the other day from this fool from Cali. He said what makes people Rasa in America is that they all share indigenous blood of the Americas. And that makes sense, right? So if you guys are Chicanos and Rasa because you share indigenous blood of the Americas, then why don't you speak the indigenous language? See, maybe you're indigenous in your heart, so you like getting the Aztec tattoos. And look, what I'm trying to say is this. What language do you speak? Spanish. What music do you listen to? Spanish. What food do you eat? Spanish mixed with native. What clothes do you wear? You probably ain't wearing Native American clothes. You're probably wearing European shit that came from us, from the Spanish side, right? So my whole point in that is, are you Chicano or are you Hispanic? So I don't get it. See, the fools from Cali don't even know who they are. You might not even know who you are. It seems like it. You're saying you're Chicano because your father is from Mexico. That's the only thing. That's the reason that makes you Chicano. Well, it's not where you're from. That's a nationality. That means that your father's from Mexico. Now, his blood could be Chicano. His blood could be pure Aztec. For all I know, that's not what I'm talking about. But what I'm saying is you're basing it off nationality. I'm basing it off of the blood, the sangre. So a lot of New Mexico, a lot of New Mexicans do have Mexican blood, do have Mexican roots. So I don't see why you guys make a difference. Anyway, I'm going to make another video diving into this subject, the indigenous, Hispanic, the blood, and what, just this whole situation of what I was talking about. But I gotta go pick up my stepdaughter from school, so fuck this video, I'm out. So this one says, but yet as much as you point out that we get it all from you, Spain, you Spaniards have to be all about being on our turf. You bring your shit here, we run it here. First of all, when I'm telling my history stories, I'm telling about my ancestors, so I'm talking about 400 or 500 years ago. This person says, you Spaniards have to be all about being on our turf. Which brings me to my next point. We're not Spaniards, dog. None of us is, unless you're living in Spain. We're not living 400 years ago, dog. Calm the fuck down. I've always identified as Hispanic. I know a lot who identify as Chicano. A lot of us are both. We're mestizos, we're coyotes, we're New Mexicans. We ain't living in the 15 and 1600s when the Spaniards conquered the Americas. I just teach about that stuff. We're living here now, 400 years after the conquest. Our families are born here and raised here. My grandparents are from here. Their grandparents are from here. It goes so far back that we are from here. So what the fuck you talking about calling us Spaniards and saying that we're coming over here taking your turf? This is our turf. This is New Mexico. And I hate to be disrespectful, but since you want to call this your turf, you say we bring shit here, you run it here. Really? The only thing you guys 100% run is your reservations. You only run what was reserved and given to you. And maybe that's why you guys are so sour. And I don't mean to say this disrespectfully to any of my Native Americans who aren't disrespecting. I'm trying to make a point to this one person. We're not Spaniards. There's a lot of Native Americans who hold to their old traditions and cultures as much as they can. Those are Native Americans. The rest of you who are trying to say you're indigenous but you're living Hispanic, you guys are fake, bro. That's what a cholo was originally. A cholo and a chola were an indigenous person that they were putting through the missions and the schools, you know, trying to Europeanize them, whatever you would call it. They were trying to turn them Hispanic. Or if it was the English people, they were trying to turn them English. If it was the French, they're trying to turn them French. But since we're talking about our people, they were trying to Hispanicize them. They're trying to turn them Spanish. And so they would call them cholos. They were Native Americans who dressed like Hispanics, who lived like Hispanics, who took the Spanish religion. Those were the original cholos and cholas. But that was 400 years ago too. Today, we all dress the way we dress. We're all Americans, bro. Even me, Hispanic, as white as I look, because I have Hispanic blood, I have Germanic blood, I have so much blood. I'm just a coyote from New Mexico. But yes, I'm New Mexican. My mom is from New Mexico. Her mom is from New Mexico. Us people that call ourselves Hispanic have pride for who our ancestors were. But we were born here, bro. We've been here for 400 years. Some have been here for 300, 200. Either way, we've been here for a long ass time and this is our fucking home. What are you gonna do? Roll us out and send us back to Spain? We don't belong there. We've never even fucking been there. And I don't even know if they accept Falins over there. We're Americans, bro. You need to learn to accept it. Both of our cultures are mixed together. And that's the point I was trying to make yesterday, but I had to go pick up my stepdaughter at school, so I had to stop. I was trying to get to the point, are you Chicano or are you Hispanic? Now, not you. You're probably a Native American. But I was talking about asking somebody if they're Chicano, which comes from Mexica, Mexicano, if they're Chicano or if they're Hispanic. Because they like to get Aztec tattoos and claim that they're indigenous and that raza is underlined by the indigenous blood. But yeah, if you don't speak Spanish, they say, oh, you ain't Chicano, you ain't Mexican. So they speak Spanish. They eat food that came from Spain. They ride horses. They fucking wear cowboy hats and boots. All that came from Spain. Our enchiladas, they have green chili, eggs from the chickens, beef from the cows. You know, unless you eat chicken enchiladas with chicken. The green chili is from here. It's indigenous to the Americas. The vegetables, the tomatoes, the lettuce, the onion. So my whole point in this is our cultures are mixed now. So I don't see why there's no divide. Hispanics, Chicanos, indigenous, Native Americans, we should all be united. Who's in control now? Who's in power? Who's the one running things? Think about it. It's the rich, the real white people. No, I'm not trying to make this a race thing or nothing like that. I'm just trying to say, we're the poor people, they're the rich people. So who's the ones that are on bottom, and why are we fighting with each other? It's like they're over there playing the art of war, letting us fight each other so we could kill each other off and they could win. Why would we want to let them win? That's why I've been trying to say natives and Spaniards need to unite. And yes, sometimes you're going to hear some hard things that I got to say because I just speak the truth. And I'm always going to speak the truth. And I'm always going to stand up for what I believe in. I fucking love our Hispanic statues. I hate when you guys tear them down. But I also love our Native American history, our Native American culture that's blended because we got to take both. You probably have Hispanic blood. Most people that call themselves Chicano, by the way, have Spanish blood. Like I was saying earlier, they just like to ignore the fact that they have it because they say that their Spanish ancestors were rapists and murderers and beheaders and befooters and all that, which they were. But you gotta take the bad with the good. It's in your blood. What are you gonna do? Just shit on yourself? No, bro, you gotta represent what's in your blood. And that's why people hate us out here in New Mexico, is because we represent our Hispanic side of the blood. And other people in California, Arizona, you know, they don't. I heard Colorado does. And I'm not... To each his own. Some people might represent their Spanish blood, some people might not. But for the most part, we represent it. We have fiestas every year that represent our Spanish conquistador ancestors who conquered New Mexico. We have statues. We also have beef over statues. The natives tearing down our statues, us getting mad over it, and it goes both ways, back and forth. But anyway, I was just trying to reply to this comment real quick. I know I got a little off track, but I said what I said. Tragedy. Hope you learned something new. I'm out. So this one says, you are not Hispanic. We are not Latino. We are indigenous to this continent. All those labels are from the colonizers to divide and conquer. We are all the same people. Now what the fuck are you talking about? Speak for yourself, bro. Maybe you're indigenous to this continent and you think that those labels are from the colonizers. But most of me and my people, we have Hispanic blood, so we're Hispanic. We have native blood, which makes us Mestizo. These are not just words that were made up. I've explained this before a million fucking times. Hispanic comes from Hispania, which was Spain. So if you're Hispanic, you were from Hispania, or you had blood from Hispania, you know. There was the Peninsulares, who were born in Spain, the Creoles, who were Spaniards born in New Spain, and then it went from there. And Native American, to me, is anybody indigenous to the Americas, North and South America. Now that covers a lot of people. And at the beginning of time, they did try to do that. Like I said, they tried to Hispanicize them. They tried to Europeanize them. They tried to send them to missions. Why do you think they called them missions? What do you think the mission was? The mission was to convert the natives into the Hispanics and make them take their culture, their religion. And so a lot of them did. But over time, our blood mixed. There was relationships. Now they're always throwing this R word, great, out there, saying that all of the mestizos are products of that. Come on, bro, really? Think about it. Maybe at first when Christopher Columbus came to the Caribbean islands in 1492. But if you know history, then you'll know that when Cortez fought the Tlaxcalans, and then after that he made an alliance with them, they gave them some women, and Cortez gave them some captains, and they married, and they made a truce through marriages. Cortez himself married a Mexica woman. Her name became Doña Marina. And what do you think their kids were? They were mestizos. All those captains with their Tlaxcalan wives, their kids were mestizos. Then when the Spaniards came up to New Mexico, the Pueblo people that they mixed with over time, mestizos. Same thing with the Apaches, the Navajos, the Genizaros that were here, you know? All of that. Well, if you want to learn more about this, scroll through my videos, bro. You'll see I teach about all this shit. Don't try to take it out of context by watching one video. Scroll through. It'll take more than one video to make it make sense. I try to prove a point to everybody, but it seems like some people don't understand. Anyway, this is Tragedy. Thank you for watching. Hope you learned something new. I'm out. Okay, this one says, I'm Mexican American. I hate being called Latino or Hispanic. We're not the same at all of Guatemalan or Puerto Rico, etc. Why? Why aren't you the same? The only difference is a little bit of the culture. Listen, when Spain came to the New World, which then became New Spain, the Americas, that included the Caribbean islands, that included Mexico, Central America, South America, everything except Brazil. That was Portuguese. And the reason for that is because Portugal and Spain were having a debate of whose land belonged to who. So they drew a line between the hemispheres. Anything east of that line belonged to Portugal. Anything west of that line belonged to Spain. So the only thing jutting out from that line is Brazil. So that belonged to Portugal. But the Portuguese came from the Spanish. So how are you not the same? The only difference is a little bit of the culture. And that would be because of the differences in indigenous tribes that were in the Americas. Whoever was the indigenous people when the Spaniards came, they mixed with Spanish. Everything mixed with Spanish. That's where the underline is. The underline isn't the indigenous. The underline is the Spanish. Why do you think all the names of all our towns are still Spanish? Why do you think you speak Spanish? The music you listen to is Spanish. Spanish, Spain, Hispanic, Hispania. See, I don't know how else to explain this, but to say Mexicans, Guatemalans, Puerto Rico, Colombians, Cubans, yes, I could understand why you're saying you're not the same, because the language you speak Spanish is different. The cultures are different, but at the same time, they're the same. You got the same sangre, you got the same blood. You got that Hispanic blood and indigenous blood of the Americas, like I said, no matter what part of America. But if you're Mexican American, you are Hispanic and you are Latino, because Mexico is part of Latin America. Latino is just short for Latino Americano, which is Latin America in English. So you are Latino, and since you have Spanish in your blood, then you are Hispanic as well. But to sum it all up, you're mestizo, and all of us would be mestizo. Or by these days, with all the watered down blood and all the other mixtures of everything else that came into the Americas, we're coyotes, bro. Anyway, thank you for watching. Hope you learned something new. This is Tragedy. I'm out. So today I'm going to tell you guys about Barrio de Analco. Now, Barrio de Analco was one of the first villages in Santa Fe. It was built by the Tlaxcalan natives, and that's where they lived. So like I told you before, in 1598, when Juan de Oñate came to New Mexico, his Tlaxcalan allies came with him, and he was outnumbered by Tlaxcalan natives. There was more natives than there was Spaniards when they settled in New Mexico. But I'm not telling Oñate's story today, so let's skip forward about 10 years. By the year 1607, it was recorded that some Hispanic people had already started building villages in Santa Fe. By 1610, it was officially established as the capital of New Mexico and the capital of the northern province of New Spain. So if you go to Santa Fe now, where the plaza's at, all those surrounding buildings, besides the governor's palace of course, a lot of those surrounding buildings used to be the Spaniards' houses. So if you go into those shops, you'll notice it's like, you'll walk through a hall and then it opens up to like a big ass patio and there's shops inside there. Well, those used to be the conquistadores' houses. Those are where they entertained their guests. Those were the different rooms. They lived in kind of like mansions. The governor's palace wasn't just the governor's palace that you see now. It was a complex of more buildings. They trained their soldiers there. They kept their weapons there. It was the military capital. And that's why it was right there on the plaza. The plaza was where they had their market, where they sold things, where they did everything. You know, it's even where they executed people. While those other surrounding buildings, like where Five and Dime is and all that, those used to be the conquistadores' homes. Those were the nobles, the ones that ran Santa Fe. And then you had the Tlaxcalans, who were considered almost like the peasants. Even though they came as allies they were still darker skinned. And back then, the lighter the skin, the higher the nobility, the darker the skin, the lower, and that's how it was. So they threw the Tlaxcalans to the other side of the river. So this side where the plaza's at, that's where all the rich people were, the Spaniards, and this side is where all the Tlaxcalans were. And that is now modern day, where the San Miguel Chapel is, where the oldest church is, where the Laredo Chapel, even where the St. Francis Cathedral, that whole area was Barrio de Analco. Now the Tlaxcalans built this place. They lived in it. This was their barrio, Barrio de Analco. And this was built in the early 1600s, between 1610, 1620, 1630, you know, the early 1600s. They built downtown Santa Fe. And like I said, the Tlaxcalans outnumbered the Hispanics, probably like 3-1. I can't give you an exact number, but they outnumbered them. And that's one of the ways that we have Mexican roots. Anyway, another fun fact about Barrio de Analco is it's still there to this day, and that's actually the barrio that I grew up at, my mom grew up at, my aunties and my uncles, we grew up right there. So if you go to Santa Fe and you know where Alto Street is, there's a Boys and Girls Club on Alto Street, there's a park right across from there. Carlos Cervantes painted that park. Now Carlos Cervantes is a really honorable, highly respected man in our community. While he was in the New Mexico prison rights of 1980 and he's on lifetime parole, that's all I'll say. But he's a good dude, he's an honorable man, he painted that park. Shout out to Carlos Cervantes and all the Cervanteses. Well, I grew up right down the street from that park. And if you notice, on the wall it says Barrio de Analco. And as a kid I never knew what that meant. But I always seen that park, I always played in that park, I smoked in the park, we partied in the park. That was our hood park. As a matter of fact, I always called that park Barrio Park, because I didn't know the name. Now I know the name. It's like Luis, or actually I don't know the name. I thought I knew the name. I got married in that park, so I knew the name at that time a couple years ago. I wanted to get married in the barrio that I grew up, so I even got married at Barrio de Analco. The only difference, it's more this way. But growing up, that was the old barrio, the old west side barrio. Anyway, that's the story of Barrio de Analco. If you have any questions, I could elaborate, but that's off the top. Thank you for watching. This is Tragedy. I hope you learned something new. I'm out. So yesterday I was telling you guys the story about Barrio de Analco, and then I told you how later on in life I also got married there. Well, I found these old clips of the park where I grew up that I was telling you about, that Carlos Cervantes painted, the one that says Barrio de Analco, something like that on the wall. And I also got clips of when I got married at that park, so I'm going to share these clips with you. Check it out.
Can't breathe, blind can't see, let's rise. This is for the 505, 505, 505 live, 505 strong, 505 survive the night. This is my home sweet home, land of enchantment. All my homies chant this. Step into the wrong route and you'll get wrapped up in plastic. See it's strong. Everybody made it to New Mexico, just don't let go. It's time to show these bottles that we buckle. This is our shot, they are hardly letting go. Charlie, till we die, we gonna blind it, throw it back up in their face, cause they forgot it. See, we grew up in life with the eyes on the stars. We knew it'd only take us, our minds and our hearts. Now we growing up the losses, we're going far, going far. They lock us down, beat us, take our homes and our cars. Teen suicide is number one up in the nation. What we facing, genocide, we let it ride. That makes us stronger in the long run. See our strengths and our face, our destiny. Your wish just wait and keep on working, cause eventually it pays. They say that we're a dying race, ha, that's funny.
So today I want to talk about the massacre at Acoma, Pueblo. I want to tell you why I believe it happened. So the massacre at Acoma, Pueblo happened in the year 1599. 1 year after Juan de Oñate tried to colonize New Mexico, the people of Acoma, Pueblo rose up and rebelled, and in turn, there was a great massacre. Well, let me tell you why this even happened. So whenever the Spaniards were kicking it in their camp, they were partying, drinking. They used to have these plays. They would celebrate the Reconquista of Spain. So they would celebrate, they would have soldiers shooting. It would be a mock war, a little mock battle. And so the soldiers would be shooting each other and then falling. And then after the play, you know, they'd get back up and they'd be celebrating. But one day they were doing this. It was either in San Juan or San Gabriel that they were doing this. And some people from Acoma were watching them from a distance. And they seen that after they got shot, they all got back up and started celebrating. So they thought that the Spaniards tricked them. They thought that their weapons were harmless, that they were just used as a fear tactic and that they couldn't really cause damage. So after this, one of Juan de Oñate's nephews and a few other Spaniards, I would say 10 to 15 of them, went to Acoma, Pueblo. His name was Juan de Zaldivar, or Juan Zaldivar de Oñate. He was one of the conquistadores that helped conquer New Galicia with Captain Guzman and Cristobal de Oñate, who was also his uncle. Well, after Cristobal de Oñate died, then some years later passed, Juan de Oñate came to colonize New Mexico. His two nephews, Juan and Vicente Zaldivar, came with him. So on this day, it's said that Juan de Zaldivar and his captains went to the Pueblo and they were divided. One native told him, hey, look, we got some clothes for you in this house. And then another native, hey, we have some money, some whatever, in this house. And they split them up and then they slaughtered them. Another story says that the Spaniards were being aggressive and inappropriate with their women, and so they jumped them. Either way, the Acoma people jumped Juan de Zaldivar and his men, killing Juan de Zaldivar and most of the men. A couple got away jumping off of the cliff. Acoma Pueblo is on a high mesa, so they had to jump off the cliff and they survived. Only a couple survived. Then they went to Juan de Oñate, told him what happened, so he sent Vicente Zaldivar and about 70 men with a cannon and told them to do what they do. When they got to Acoma Pueblo, the natives were on top of the mesa, jeering at them, throwing rocks at them, talking shit. The Spaniards were firing their cannon at them. They were shooting their harquebuses, but they couldn't hit them. Finally, the Spaniards found a way up. They got onto the top of the mesa. It was a 6-day battle, and they say about 600 people died. Some say 800. So hundreds of people died. They got slaughtered. They were chopping them up, throwing body parts off the cliff. They were brutal. And all the survivors were taken to Juan de Oñate. I can't tell you exactly the number of people he sentenced or all that, but I know he defooted a group of them, chopped off their foot, and then he made a lot of them slaves, dispersed them through the kingdom of New Spain. And that was his punishment. Well, let me tell you why I believe this had to happen. You gotta understand, Juan de Oñate grew up in Mexico. His father was Cristobal de Oñate. If you haven't seen my story about him, go watch it. While Cristobal de Oñate fought the famous Mistan War, and he also fought a lot of other rebellions against the Chichimeca Indians. So when Juan de Oñate was growing up, he was a soldier. He grew up fighting the Chichimeca natives, the rebellions. He knew what happened, how rebellions worked. So when he came up and settled in New Mexico, he had no way of knowing that the Pueblo people weren't as warlike as the Chichimeca, but he knew how rebellion worked. He knew that if the other Pueblos heard about the Acoma revolt, they would also revolt. And then he would have a revolt of all the Pueblos on his hands. And at this time, there was still about 70 to 100 Pueblos. I don't know exactly how much. We'll just say about 50 at least. All the surrounding Pueblos would have attacked them. They would have slaughtered them. And they would have probably died. Their colony for sure would have been unsuccessful. So not only was he acting out revenge for his nephew and his other soldiers, but he was also administering justice. And he was trying to stop a revolt from happening. So he had to use Acoma kind of as an example. Let me give you an example about how rebellion works in history and how it spreads like a wildfire once it does. The American Revolution, once that happened, the French seen that the Americans rose up and pushed out the British, so they had the French Revolution. Then there was just more revolutions, and that's just how it works. Once people see revolution, they see it's possible, they see it's successful, then they revolt. So he had to put it down before it could start. Acoma had revolted and killed a few of his men. He had to send 70 of his men over there to slaughter them, to make an example out of them, so they could know what could happen to them if they rose up and rebelled. As for the cutting off of the feet, there's 2 reasons why that could have happened, in my opinion. 1, he cut off their feet so they couldn't fight against him. You can't fight one-footed, right? 2, in Spain, during those 700 years that they were fighting the Moors had this thing after battle. They would cut off the tips of the nose of the people that they would defeat, or they would cut off some kind of body part so that way they could walk around with their defeat showing. And so maybe Juan de Oñate did it for this too. Cut off their feet so that way, 1, they can't rise up and fight against him, and 2, it shows that they were defeated. It's a sign of their defeat, and they'll always remember growing up, and so that way they don't revolt again. Now, as bad as these things were and as bad as it sounds, that's just why I think they happened, and that's why it went down like that. The Acoma seen them practicing their play, so they thought their weapons were harmless, so they jumped them. Then the Spaniards sent 70 soldiers, pretty much slaughtered the whole Pueblo to show them that their weapons were in fact very harmful. But that's the story of the Acoma massacre. It was very bloody, very brutal. But shout out to the people of Acoma Pueblo. They're always showing me love in my comments. They always show me love. They're the native Pueblo that shows me the most love. Always. So shout out to Acoma. Even though my Spanish ancestors did the worst to their Pueblo, they understand. History is history. And they show me love. And I show them love back the same. And I'm sorry for what my ancestors did to your Pueblo. There's nothing I could do about it. There's nothing, but respect to you guys. Anyway, this is Tragedy. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something new. I'm out. So this one says, they did not conquer. Spaniards were ruthless invaders. Spanish explorers were brutal and took advantage of innocent natives. Yes, everything you're saying is true. But how does that mean they didn't conquer? It was a conquest. They conquered lands that before that weren't theirs. They ventured out of their country of Hispania and they went across the Atlantic Ocean and they conquered a lot of the territory over here. Yes, they were brutal, and yes, they took advantage of innocent natives. But that doesn't mean they didn't conquer. That's just the brutal and fucked up way that they did conquer. A lot of the Spanish ways of conquest go back to ancient Rome. They had this saying, Veni Vidi Vici. We came, we saw, we conquered. And that's just how they were. See, at the time, when Rome ruled pretty much all of the known world, it ruled Hispania as well. And the Romans were conquerors. They conquered most of the known world at the time. And then after that, the conquerors got conquered by the Visigoths, who were Germanic, barbaric tribes. And they fucking sacked Rome and they defeated Rome. And when they defeated Rome, they kind of took Spain and they lived in Spain. So Spain was a Visigoth territory for a long time. Before the Roman conquest, it was lived in by the Celts, the ancient Celts. After the Celts, the Romans. After the Romans, the Visigoths. And then after the Visigoths got conquered, see, conquerors always get conquered. The Visigoths ended up getting conquered by the Moors, the Muslim Moors. Well, most of them did. All of them except for a little part up north in the Basque region and near the Basque region. They're the only ones that stayed Visigoth. And when the Reconquista of Spain came, that's where it came from. And they kicked the Moors out and they reconquered their country. And then that's when they sent Spaniards to conquer even more. So it was a conquest, no matter how brutal it was. All conquests are brutal. The Mongol conquest, all the Roman conquests, the Greek conquests, the conquest of Alexander. Just think of all the conquests throughout history. They're all bloody. And they all have to kill a lot of people. They're all brutal. So stop saying just the Spaniards, but it is true. But that doesn't mean it wasn't a conquest. How does that mean it wasn't a conquest? Anyway, hope you learned something new. Tragedy, I'm out. So this one says, I give you props for coming on here and speaking your mind and taking a step toward unity. So what I do here and on my YouTube channel is I speak about history, about my people, my ancestors. Mostly I teach about the Spanish side, and lately I've been getting into the Native American side. And all of these years, I've been noticing the clash between Hispanic and Native. I've been part of that clash. I'm Hispanic, so I've been fighting for the Hispanic side. And the Natives, they fight for their side, and it's understandable. But what I think is that the government is going about this the wrong way. And what I also think is that the people are going about it the wrong way. The people in power are sitting up there on their high horse in their high chair, watching us, like the low-born people, fight amongst each other and kill themselves, while they stay on top and rise above all of us. That's what they want. They want us to slaughter each other. I know our past was bloody, and I'm gonna bring it up because I teach history. But I don't say that the things they did, grape, and all that bullshit, was right. I never teach that it was right. I just teach that it happened. And some of my Native Americans get hurt. Some of them get mad. Some of them get in their feelings. Well, I get in my feelings when Native Americans talk about their things too. We're both gonna get in our feelings. But what we need to do is come to the table, discuss this shit, come to like an agreement. We need to come to an understanding and we need to unite instead of just killing each other off. How are we gonna save our history? How are we gonna bring back all the Pueblo's history and keep it preserved for the next 100, 200, 300, 1,000 years? We have to unite and help each other. And we can't help each other by forgetting what happened in the past. Because what happened in the past, no matter how brutal it was, is what made things how they are today. It wouldn't be how it was today if it wasn't for what happened in the past. Our missions, our churches, our monuments, our historical sites, None of that would be there if it wasn't for the stuff that happened in the past. We gotta respect both sides. There's two sides to every coin. Anyway, I hope you learned something new. This is Tragedy. Thank you for watching. I'm out. So this one says, Spain came just like Columbus. Spain came with Columbus. Columbus came under the Spanish flag. Cristobal Colombo, that's his real name. He was born in Genoa, Italy. So he was a man from Italy. He was an explorer. So he knew how to ride a ship. He was a navigator. He knew how to work a compass. He knew what was east, west, south, north. He knew the currents of the ocean around his time. He was an explorer. He went to the governments in Italy. He went to the governments in France. He went to the government in England. And he was proposing a new idea that if he sailed west, he could get to India. Because this was at the time that scientists were starting to throw out the idea that the earth was not in fact flat, but that it was a sphere. So he figured if it's a sphere, you go west and you go all the way around it. Which he was right. He just didn't know there was a continent in between. So after all those other kings and queens turned him down, he went to Queen Isabel and King Ferdinand of Spain. He asked him if they would fund his expedition to the west, and they told him that they were interested in his idea, so they didn't turn him down, but they were fighting the war with the Moors. They were almost done though. They were about to kick him out of Granada, which was the southern province in Spain, the only province that the Muslims had left at the time. But she promised Cristobal Colombo that she would help him out after the war was over, and the war ended in 1492. She funded his expedition. He sailed west. He landed in the islands that he named Hispania, which is now Haiti and Cuba, I think. And he thought he was off the coast of India. He thought that there was some islands off the coast of India, which there is. He thought he landed on those islands, and he thought the natives of those islands were Indians, hence the name Indian. So my whole point in this is to tell you, Columbus came under the flag of Spain. Columbus was Spain. Yeah, he was Italian, but he came under Queen Isabel. He came under the crown of Spain. But fun fact about Christopher Columbus, he fucked up everything. Once he got to the island, he didn't find no gold. He didn't find nothing. That's why he was enslaving the people. He was trying to make up for what he was telling Queen Isabel. He was writing her and sending messages telling her that he found gold and riches and places to colonize, and none of this was true. So he was on a mission, a desperate mission, trying to find gold, trying to find slaves, trying to make it right, trying to make what he told Isabel true, trying to make his lie into a truth. Well, he was unsuccessful. So when he went back to Spain and stood before Queen Isabel and King Ferdinand, she banished him from Spain. She took all his titles off of him. She didn't give him no money. He was pretty much turned into a bum and a piece of shit. Anyway, thank you for watching. Hope you learned something new. This is Tragedy. I'm out. So have you ever wondered what's up with centuries? Like when they're talking about the 15th century, the 16th century, the 17th century. Why the 15th century is the 1400s? Why is the 16th century the 1500s? You know, why is it the 16th century, the 1600s, the 15th century, the 1500s? It sounds a little confusing, but it'll make sense when I break it down. So the way we keep time, years, months, days, our calendar, that came from the Romans. It came from Julius Caesar. He created that calendar, the one that we still use today. So the way historians do it, the year 0 was the year Jesus died. Back in the day, the world was Catholic. Catholic held power, the Roman Catholic Church. So that's why it's based on Jesus. Unless you're a Muslim. If you're a Muslim living in the Middle East, they have a different calendar based off of Muhammad's death. But anyway, so year 0 was the year Jesus died. Anything before that is before Christ. Anything after that is Anno Domini, after his death, AD. So from the year 0, or I guess you could say from the year 1 to the year 99, that's the first century, the first 100 years. Then from the year 100 to 199, the second century. From 200 to 299, the third century. And on it goes. So when you get to the 15th century, that's the 1400s. The 16th century, the 1500s. It could be confusing, but I hope I made it make sense. That's centuries. That's how they work. Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something new. This is Tragedy. I'm out. So when historians are talking about prehistory, they're talking about things that happened before written documentation. So the thing about New Mexico history is that the Pueblo Native Americans didn't have a written language. So our prehistory dates back pre-colonial times. In other words, before 1598, New Mexico had no written language. They had no way of documenting their histories, nothing. So all we find is their pottery and their petroglyphs and things like that. Then when 1598 comes around, Juan de Oñate comes to New Mexico and they started writing things down. But the Pueblo Revolt of 1680 destroyed all those documents. The natives burnt all the churches, burnt all the documents, burnt everything. So all the church records that would have had all the names of the people who were married, the children, all the documents that were in the governor's palace that would have had any trials, anything that was written that would have told us what was going on from 1598 to 1680 was all burnt and destroyed. The only things you could find is any kind of correspondence they might have wrote to Mexico City or other places. So the archives in Mexico City will have a few things, but for the most part, 1598 to 1680 was erased. It was burned, all the documents. So all we have is what the people told us, the Native Americans and the Spaniards, and we put it together and we draw our own conclusions on what happened in our history. So Don Diego De Vargas came back 1692, reconquered New Mexico, and established Spanish government again. So if you go to the local archives in Santa Fe, you'll only find documents from 1692 and onward. You won't find nothing prior to that because everything was burnt. Unless you go to Mexico City, you might find a couple things that might have been saved, but it would have had to been correspondence from the governor to the viceroy, stuff like that. Or maybe even if there was some Spaniards who had wives and they wrote them, something like that, some kind of correspondence was saved, but I don't know of anything like that. But it's possible. But my whole point is prehistory, like in Europe, prehistory, I don't even know what they date prehistory because you have written documents from 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago from the BC days. Here in New Mexico, we didn't have a written language until the Spanish came. Our prehistory dates before 1598. So our written history is very recent. And then it was burnt in 1680. And then they had to start writing again. So the last 300 or so years is all we have documented. Before that, there was about 100 years of Spanish rule, but they got thrown out, the documents got burned, and everything was destroyed. So that's another cool thing about New Mexico history. It's a mystery. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you learned something new. This is Tragedy. I'm out. So this one says, isn't Hispanic a made-up word for the Census Bureau? No, bro, no. If you want to be technical and literal, aren't all words made up words? We gotta use words to describe things so we understand what each other is talking about. Hispanic comes from the word Hispano. The people who came from Hispania, which we now call Spain, back then it was Hispania, they came from there, they were the Hispanos. So the Hispano people were the Hispanic people who came from Hispania. So Hispanic is a made up word, I guess. All words are made up. But it's to label the people who came from Spain, from Hispania. Now in their language, in Spanish, they were called Hispanos. And nowadays, they're called Hispanics. But it's all the same. The root word is Hispania, Hispanic, Spain. You gotta look at root words. So no, bro, no. Hispanic isn't just a made-up word for the Census Bureau. You guys are fucking tripping. For you slow people that can't understand what I'm talking about, I label myself Hispanic because I'm Hispanic. That doesn't mean I'm from Spain. Now these people are telling me, oh, go back to Spain and see if they accept you as a Spaniard. Bro, I know I'm not from fucking Spain. I'm from New Mexico, northern New Mexico, Santa Fe to be exact. By me saying I'm Hispanic just means that I have blood that came from Spain generations ago. And it's been passed down, and we still have blood of Spain. So that makes us Hispanic. And not only does it make us Hispanic by blood, we're Hispanic by culture. Especially here in northern New Mexico, Santa Fe, Hispaniola, Taos, Las Vegas, all the northern New Mexico towns, even Albuquerque. I consider that part of northern New Mexico because if you draw a line across the middle of the map of New Mexico, Albuquerque is north of that line. And we celebrate fiestas. We grew up in this culture. Why do you think I'm wearing a rosary? I ain't even fucking Catholic. It's just our culture. It's tradition. We got it from our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, their great-grandparents. And we've always had pride. Sangre de conquistadores. So no, bro, no. None of us is claiming to be from Spain. just because we're saying we're Hispanic. We're not Spaniards or whatever they call themselves over there in Spain. We're from New Mexico. We're American citizens. Well, most of us are. But my whole point is we're New Mexicans, dog. We're not fucking Spaniards. We're just Hispanic blood. Does the people that are saying they're Anglos come from England? No, bro, it's just in their blood. So you guys are misunderstanding me. When I'm saying I'm Hispanic, I'm not saying I'm from Spain. I don't claim to be from Spain. That's just where our people came from 400 or 500 years ago. And they settled down here. And there was wars. There was massacres. There was a lot of fucked up shit that happened. But we're their ancestors and we're still here. Anyway, thank you for watching. Hope you learned something new. I'm out. So this one says, in all caps by the way, so they must be angry. Listen, the only reason why we have Spanish in us is because they raped our ancestors. Why would you accept some that raped our... Listen, bro. This is the type of narrative that makes the Native Americans hate the Hispanic people and not want to unite and not want to come to the table and make terms. We need to come to terms with our past because our past is already behind us, first of all. Second of all, the only reason why we have Spanish in us is because they raped our ancestors. Bro, you must not have heard of all the marriages between captains, the alliances between the Tlaxcalans and the Spaniards. Cortez himself married an Aztec woman. He didn't rape her. Juan de Oñate's wife was an offspring of King Moctezuma of the Aztecs and Hernán Cortez himself. The Spanish blood that is flowing through our veins isn't rapist blood. It isn't just a product of rape. I'm tired of this narrative. This is something that needs to be addressed. We have all these angry Native Americans running around saying that we're representing rapists, that we're having fiestas and putting up these statues for rapists. Man, that whole narrative is wrong, bro. We don't support sex offenders. We don't like rapists. And during the Spanish conquest, I'm sure there was some rapes. During every conquest, there's rapes. During every siege of every city, when they break down those walls and the soldiers enter the city, they take all the gold, they take all the women. That's how it's always been. So I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm not trying to put a veil over it and say it didn't happen because I'm pretty sure it did. But you're trying to say the only reason why we have Spanish blood is because of rape. Serio? Come on, dog. That's like saying my grandpa's a rapist, and his grandpa's a rapist, and his grandpa's a rapist. This narrative needs to stop, dog. We're mestizos. We have all kinds of blood mixed, which actually makes us coyotes. I have German blood, Spanish blood, native blood, and who knows what the fuck else. I only know my dad. My mom, her dad is now even questionable. That's what happens when you're from the streets, dog. But all these natives who are teaching the next generation that Hispanics are nothing but rapists and people with Hispanic blood have rapist blood in their veins. Come on, dog. Serio? And I get blocked on TikTok for trying to just speak the truth and spread positivity. Then you have people like this in my comments. Come on, dog. This is tragedy. I'm out.